we're calling this the encounter, amen. And we didn't want to just have a service. We wanted God to meet us at our very point of need. Anybody got any needs on tonight?
And we will be found unto the praise and the honor and the glory at the appearance of Jesus. Watch this. Whom even though you've never seen him, you love him. In whom, even though you might not even see him now, yet you believe. You rejoice with joy unspeakable and full of glory, receiving the end of your faith, even the salvation of your souls. Just look at your neighbor real quickly as you take your seats and just say, neighbor, pastor's going to talk for the next 20 minutes on this particular subject. You have to, you must keep your head in the game. When you gotta go, the enemy has an assignment to keep you from getting where you gotta go, and you gotta fight your way through. Sometimes you gotta fight with people you love. Sometimes you gotta fight with people you worship with. Sometimes you gotta fight with people in your own. Sometimes you gotta fight with your own blood. Sometimes your own blood becomes your worst enemy. But keep fighting for your faith. Because something. He says you gotta keep your head in the game. And so he says they're in a fight. They're in a war. They're going through some very hard tests. They're in a battle right now. And it's not just cool to allow you to be quoting churchy phrases. And sometimes the church teaches spirituality without rationality. And so you can be so spiritual but non-thinking, and you'll still find yourself losing. You've got to have your rational mind in the game so that you won't be duped by various spirits that prey on your spirituality. And so he says you got to stay focused because you can get so enamored with the fight that you'll start choosing your own weapons to fight with. And so people say something, then you start saying something back. And when you start responding to foolishness, that means they've got in your head. That means they penetrated the place that was supposed to be sacred. Because God says, I'll keep you in perfect peace if you keep your... And that means when people get into your head, you've given them access to a place they're never supposed to be. I don't know how, but man, somehow. And I'm closer than I really thought I was. Because the closer I get, the harder I gotta fight. Yes. So somehow. And so he says, keep your head in the game. They're going through this test. They're being persecuted for their faith. They're being persecuted for their mission. They're being persecuted for their ministry. They're being persecuted because they refuse to compromise standards. They're being persecuted because they are committed to God. They're being persecuted. They're going through because they refuse to take down their standards. Peter has to give them a word to keep them sharp and focused so they'll not abort the process. Lord have mercy. Look at somebody and say the wrong decision will abort the process. You got to keep your head in the game, because if you make decisions based on how you feel, you'll destroy the whole process and you'll destroy how far you've come. You can't make decisions based upon your feelings, because your feelings will cause you to revert backwards and go backwards. So he says you'll abort the process because you can't afford to miscarry this baby. And you can't afford to miscarry this baby. You can't afford to have this baby die. You can't afford to have this die. And so he says, so because you got too much in you and you've got too much going for you and there's a bright future ahead of you, I've got to give you a word to keep your mind sharp and to keep your head in the game so you won't lose miscarry this baby. So you can't let this place, somebody say this place, you can't let, no, you got to say this place, you can't let this place, this fight, this dilemma, this battle, this war, you can't let this situation, you can't let this challenge, you can't let this conflict, you can't let this contention, you can't let this place, somebody say this place, you can't let this place, you can't let the phone call you got 2 weeks ago last week, you can't let this place, you can't let the person that's intentionally trying to take you under, you can't let this, somebody say this place, you can't let this place keep your mind out of the game. So, see, the Christians in our text are being persecuted and hated because they refuse to conform to Rome's
Losing your head or your focus will be detrimental to the very thing you're trying to accomplish. Ooh. It'll hurt, diminish. It'll hurt the call. It'll hurt the progress that you've made. An unfocused mind always derails abundant gifts. I'm talking so good tonight. I hope you're writing. An unfocused mind will always derail abundant gifts. You can be gifted, super talented, have amazing ability, but your gifts, talents, and ability become irrelevant when your head isn't right.
Yes, sir.
God, have mercy. When your head isn't focused, and an unfocused head will always disrupt and hinder your progression. And that's why Peter says, no, you can't afford to get out of character now. You can't afford, yes, God, I hear you now, to stop now. You can't afford to be inconsistent now.